Do you guys ever think about dying?
A bubbly movie full of pink caused such controversy.
This world of Barbie didn't feel like it had very much for me in it.
She is pretty in pink.
Why you decided not to do the Barbie movie? Because you were attached to the Barbie movie.
You were not a big Barbie super fan, and you didn't even own one as a kid?
I was like, of course you're this way.
It's the first day of summer, and there's only one way to celebrate.
Don't miss out on the biggest
and pinkest movie of the year.
It's time to strap on your neon rollerblades
and get your tickets now for Barbie.
Barbie is a fascinating movie, and one that has been in production hell for almost 14 years, bouncing from screenwriter to screenwriter, actor to actor, and studio to studio before finally making its debut in July 2023. It's a movie that, out of sheer luck, finally ended up in the hands of a competent director and a stellar cast that likely will have some Emmy traction in the upcoming year. But as we've been blasted by pink and pastels for months now in the marketing campaign leading up to this movie, the story behind it and some controversies that's waded through have been kept below the surface. So put on your pink shirt and grab your favorite Barbie doll. Let's get into the story of Barbie's 14-year production. Our story starts all the way back in 2009 when Universal snapped up a deal to produce the film. At the time of the deal, Mattel spoke of the film as a natural next step for Barbie. With immense brand recognition and half a dozen animated productions under its belt, going live action would be a great way to expand further, with Mattel's general manager for the character, Richard Dixon, saying that Barbie had evolved from a toy into an intellectual property. But as you can imagine, the project just didn't seem to progress that well, and in 2014 it was announced again, this time with Sony at the helm, with the idea being to reach out both to new generation of toy enthusiasts and adults who've grown up with Barbie. At the time, writing was in progress with writer Jenny Bix, and production was expected to begin the next year, 2015 that is. Instead, Sony replaced Bix with Hillary Winston and ordered more rewrites, with the process continuing into 2016. Later that year, things were put into motion again, with Amy Schumer entering negotiations with Sony to potentially star as the protagonist of the Barbie movie and conduct rewrites of Winston's script alongside her sister, Kim Carmel, with production intended for spring 2017 and a release in summer of 2018. At the time, Amy Schumer was seen as an unusual choice on Sony's part, as the comedian is known for a raunchier style of stand-up comedy as opposed to the more PG-centric presentation which the producers of the film were going for at the time.
That I've named my son.
But Schumer seemed to identify with the theme of Barbie's screenplay, which had a subversive message about empowerment and going against obsessions with perfectionism. Instead of Barbie being cast as the main character in a variety of fantastical stories with its own characters and world akin to being a virtual actor in the animated movies, Amy's Barbie would act as a play on the brand itself, exploring the crossover from Barbie's fantasy world to our reality with a fish out of water tale where Barbie gets kicked out of Barbie Land for not being perfect and explores the real world, only to realize that she's fine just the way she is. Unlike a typical Barbie movie ending, the Amy Schumer collaboration didn't live happily ever after, you could say. After only 4 months, Schumer quit the project due to creative differences, with the official reasoning behind the exit being scheduling issues.
I think we said it was scheduling conflict.
Okay, that's what we said.
That's what we said. But yeah, it really was just like creative differences. But there's like a new team behind it, and it looks like it's like very feminist and cool. So I will be seeing that movie.
Was it that it didn't feel feminist and cool when you were involved in it? It was a little, yes, right.
Following the meltdown of this version of the script, Sony once again went back to the drawing board with bringing in Olivia Milch to rework Barbie's tale yet again with the hopes of reaching out to Anne Hathaway as a star.
Remember when Amy Schumer was in line to star in the live-action movie Barbie? Yeah, well, it looks like Anne Hathaway could be replacing her. The film is expected to be rated PG and should be a broad family film with lessons about trying to adhere to the unattainable standard of perfection.
In this rewrite, Barbie gets kicked out of Barbie Land for being a bit too eccentric, but eventually finds her way back through the power of believing in herself. By mid-2018, the project had stalled yet again, and Sony decided to throw in the towel, handing their option on the film to Warner Brothers, who would continue production. It was at this point when Margot Robbie began talks to star as Barbie. The big question on Barbie watchers' mind was if the concept of Barbie's exile from Barbieland and self-discovery journey would be continued with Warner. And in July 2019, the Barbie we now know began to come into being, with Margot Robbie's casting being confirmed and the writing team of Greta Gerwig and Nota Baumbach being brought on to tell the story. A coming-of-age plot where Barbie is exiled from Barbieland for not being perfect enough, going on a journey of well, again, this seems similar, doesn't it? I think we all get the point that the rewrites didn't really rewrite all that much. Thankfully, despite the process beginning at probably the worst time for movies in decades, the COVID pandemic, Gerwig and Baumbach were able to actually put the pieces together.
We wrote it at such a specific time in the midst of lockdown and everything else, and it was really like, I was like, I don't even know if there's ever going to be movies again, but like if there are, let's write the most outrageous, anarchic, hilarious thing that, if they'll never let us make it, let's imaginary go out with a bang.
But while the main storyline may invoke a sense of deja vu, Greta Gerwig's influence shaped Barbie into the pink and over-the-top experience it likely should be, with Gerwig not only being a writer, but also taking on the task of directing the movie. Unlike previous Barbie animations, Gerwig's interpretation of Barbie is wacky and does not take itself that seriously, with characters and props behaving as if they really were from a plastic world. And in October 2021, the studio found their Kenergy, bringing on Ryan Gosling to play Barbie's co-star through a rather unconventional method, bribery. Margot Robbie claimed to the New York Times that she convinced Gosling to join the cast by offering him presents for every day of the shoot, saying that I just bribed him really, that's the basis of our relationship. What required a lot of attention for the shooting of Barbie naturally was a depiction of Barbieland, and surprisingly, the crew opted for a rather practical presentation.
I benefited from having a really long pre-production period. Yeah. I was talking to the set designer, the cinematographer, and the costume designer for a year before we even started official prep, because everything had to be figured out, because it was like, how are we even going to begin to accomplish this, and what are the rules, and what does it look like? And
Inspired by the original toys, the Barbie houses resemble the toy counterparts, being rather open with the insides of the Barbie's homes being exposed to the outsides, and elements such as fire, water, and wind not existing at all, making showers dry and pools solid, giving Barbies and Ken the ability to walk on water. The look of the stages and costumes also centered around the aesthetics of the 1950s soundstage, having a blatantly artificial yet fun look to them, which is a decision that mainly arose from the Barbie doll's debut being in 1959.
Barbie was invented in 1959, so we sort of had from 1959 until now to kind of pick all of the moments we wanted to emphasize that from the history, but also we had to make it our own and make it work for the film.
The set translates the designs of the toys into the real world, with fridges not only being filled with objects, but also two-dimensional decals, and Barbie's wardrobe being reminiscent of any doll's box you would see in a Toys R Us back in the day, featuring not only the Barbie in the middle, but also her clothes and accessories being pinned and presented on the inside. Taking a closer look at most of the furniture and prop designs, we can also see that they, like the toys, aren't very functional, with drawers and ovens often not even being operable, and utensils such as a tooth or hairbrush being oversized, not having any functional use to the point where any Barbie or Ken could only mime the brushing of teeth or hair. Pink naturally had to dominate over any other color on set. However, discussions were had over what shades of pink were most fitting on the set in order to not end up with a presentation that is too elegant. Looking at the toys for reference, the hues of pink used are saturated and in your face, and comparing the props, dresses, and houses in the film to the toys, the set designers must have loved fluorescent paint the most, as their excessive use of the specific shade of pink significantly contributed to a global shortage of that paint.
So this is crazy. It turns out that they used so much fluorescent pink paint when they created this whole Barbie land that it caused a worldwide shortage.
That's not true.
Listen to this. The film's production team told Architectural Digest that the company supplying the very specific paint was completely cleared out by the time they started running cameras.
Wow.
They had just enough pink paint to bring the whole world to life. The paint company is called Roscoe. They also blamed the supply chain issues for the shortage, but admitted that they gave Barbie, the production team, every single last bit of paint that they had.
The sets also weren't making use of massive green or blue blue screens, rather painted backdrops that complemented the plastic trees and minimalist buildings of Barbie Land, being painted in an expressionist fashion and referencing back to that retro soundstage look. Honestly, a little bit reminiscent of how the movie Elf was filmed. The Barbie movie also shows an unorthodox attitude towards costume design, mainly one that does not concern itself with continuity from one scene to the next. Barbie could be seen having drastically different hairstyles. Scene 1 could have her wear a shorter hairstyle, while scene 2 could have her wear longer flowing hair with bangs. Another thing was the clothing choices, which are always blunt and visually scream at the viewer.
One thing I wanted to capture with the Barbies is that they are dressing out of this sense of confidence and fun the way, honestly, when I think of 8-year-old girls playing dress up, they don't hold back at all. They're like, I'm wearing the feather boa and the tiara and the pearls and the heels and the bag and the gloves, and like, you're like, oh, you did it all.
The people on set also fostered a real enthusiasm for the production, with Greta Gerwig arranging sleepover parties with the girls on the cast.
Ryan could not come, but he did send a bagpiper. There was a knock on the door. We were all in our like pink pajamas doing everything, and we opened the door and there's a man in a full Scottish kilt who played the bagpipes for us and then recited a speech from Braveheart and said,
I'm sorry, what?
Yes, and then he said, Ryan sends his love, and then he left.
Margot Robbie instating Pink Days, in which everyone on set has to appear dressed in pink or pay a fine which would then be donated to charity, and the cast taking their roles seriously, fully immersing themselves into the ridiculous characters they were tasked to portray, with Ryan Gosling especially cultivating his inner Ken.
Hi, I'm Ryan Gosling. If you're a Ken, or you're Ken curious, or you're just Ken-fused like I was, here are my top 10 Ken essentials to help you tap into your Kenergy.
With Barbie finally produced after all this time and ready to be released into the world, Warner Brothers spared no expense in marketing, waging a massive campaign including dozens of collaborations, presentations, teasers, and trailers designed to catch as much attention as possible. And it seemed that this was an attempt to bring Barbiemania to the masses was a successful one, as the film's eye-popping, colorful visuals and large cast of characters got audiences hooked. But this campaign did have a few hiccups, with one of the most baffling ones emerging when the film accidentally waded into a real-world territorial dispute in the Pacific Islands. A map shown in the film representing Barbie and Ken's journey into the real world was misinterpreted by several countries as a reference to the 9-dash line, a territorial claim made by China over a region in the Pacific.
Margot Robbie hit the red carpet in Mexico last night, the latest stop on her worldwide Barbie promotional tour. It's all over the map in the background of this scene.
No.
The map shows a jagged line off the coast of China that represents the communist nation's disputed claim to the South China Sea.
The claim is so strongly opposed by China's neighbors like Vietnam and the Philippines that this misunderstanding got the Barbie movie banned in Vietnam, although regulators in the Philippines cooled things off after it was clarified that the map had nothing to do with politics and was just a cartoony graphic. I guess magic can only take you so far these days, and you kind of probably have to feel a little bit for whatever graphic designer designed this and had no idea about some of the political ramifications. And of course, the other big drama that came into play was the actors' strike.
So dishonored and so disrespected that at a moment when streaming and AI and digital is so prevalent in the industry, it has disemboweled the industry that we once knew.
But thankfully, as we discussed in our Oppenheimer video, the duality between Barbie and Oppenheimer, two films which really couldn't be any more diametrically opposed in presentation, sharing a release window, set off a social media craze that brought both productions further into the public eye.
The movie mashup known as Barbenheimer is hitting box office milestones.
Moviegoers are leaning into the wildly different tones. Some 200,000 people bought advance tickets to see both movies on the same day.
And naturally, with this Barbenheimer craze going on, if there's a video of ours that we're going to recommend you watch next, it would be this explosive story of the production of Oppenheimer, which fills in too why Barbie may have been released at the same time Oppenheimer was, as a Warner Brothers getting back at Christopher Nolan. Check it out right here.